What's up, everybody? Welcome into the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show. I'm Adam Finkelstein. I'm joined by Isaac Trotter, and it is conference tournament week. Of course, for some, that was last week, but the big boys are playing this week. And on this show, we are going to break down all 5 power conferences as we lead up to Selection Sunday, which is now just 5 days away. I couldn't be more excited. Isaac Trotter is with me, and I will be the first to publicly compliment his haircut. I think it's big time. Shout out to the barber right before the tournament. Trotter, let's get this started in the ACC. I want to talk about, first and foremost, the favorite. We've got Duke, who is in the top 5 right now in both offense and defense. They are the number 1 seed in this tournament for obvious reasons. Number 2 offense in the country, number 4 defense in the country. Cooper Flagg has a more than legitimate case to be the National Player of the Year. We've talked about that at length. But this team is getting it done on both ends of the floor. And the point you and I were talking about off camera, that I want to dig into a little bit right now, their math is perfect. Their shot distribution, the way they're getting things done defensively. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, I think the teams that can strike that balance between the shot volume game and the shot chart game are at the best, advantage to win. And Duke does both of those things. They are winning the turnover battle on most nights, and they're winning the rebounding battle on most nights. So they're basically taking way more shots than their opponents on a nightly basis. And then the shot chart comes into play, and it's like, all right, Duke gets a ton of catch and shoot threes, which is the highest quality look from three that you can get, a ton of shots at the rim. And their defense forces a ton of tough contested jumpers, and they don't let you get anything at the rim. So that blend of winning the shot chart and the shot volume game is just, and when you have the personnel that you do, it's just, that's a special combination. And it's kind of fueling a Duke team that, they look like they might be the best team in all of college basketball.
They certainly do look like that. The analytics say they are. My only hesitation, and it's not a hesitation this week because they are my favorite, is that they have 3 18-year-olds on the court at the same time. But I think that's a storyline that could play out a few weeks down the road. We will wait and see. Trotter, my question to you is, according to CBSSports.com, Duke is not your pick to win the ACC tournament. So what say you?
Well, it's the madness, right? We have to embrace a little bit of it. It wouldn't be that fun if Duke controlled the ACC tournament or the regular season and the tournament, right? So I'm looking at Clemson. This is a group that Duke has 1 loss in ACC this year. It was to Clemson. And this is a group that they're a little bit undervalued in the betting markets. They're the 3rd favorite in the ACC, but I think they're the 2nd best team in this league. They're the oldest team in the league. We've seen them match up very, very well with Duke. I like the draw that they have. And I think there's a lot of little aspects here working for Clemson. One, they have a stud guard, and Chase Hunter is a complete superstar. And his ability to score at all 3 levels, he's a 5th-year guard. He's been there, done that, played a ton of college basketball. That's huge. The second part, this defense that they're doing has been phenomenal at limiting unguarded catch-and-shoot threes. Think about this. In the last 3 months, since December 7th, they have not allowed double-digit unguarded catch-and-shoot threes in a single game. Not one time. That's like a 3-month span of you just do not get open looks against them. That's enormous. And so in an ACC tournament where you're going to have to grind out multiple wins in a row, I love that defensive aspect. I love the offensive ability to mismatch hunt. They're very big. Ian Shefflin, Victor Locken, both of those guys are big, strong, and physical, which you definitely need if you're looking ahead to an ACC tournament rematch against Duke in the final. So yeah, if we're going to have a little bit of fun today, I think Clemson would be my pick just because Duke, picking them, they're I think minus 300 to win the league, win the tournament in most betting markets. That's not fun. That's not boring. That's a little boring. I'll ride with Clemson.
All right, Clemson, for everybody to know, is even better on the offensive end of the floor than they are defensive, according to the numbers. 18th overall in offense, according to Ken Pom, 23 in defense. They do play at one of the slowest tempos in all of college basketball, so each possession counts that much more. A couple things to keep an eye out for. And what's really interesting about Clemson this year is there's no talking head like us suggesting that Brad Brownell should be fired. Everybody seems to realize that they've got a really good coach and they should ride with him. So I digress. The way we're going to work all these previews, we're going to talk about the favorites, and then we are going to go talk about the sleeper team in each conference. And Trotter, I'm going to get your pick. Again, this is in line with what you presented on CBSSports.com. So who is your sleeper pick in the ACC?
Yeah, so the parameters of this is they can't be a top 5 seed. So I'm looking at a number 7 seed in this bracket of Stanford. Like, this is a very interesting group that they have put together. I think Maxime Reynaud is one of the most, it's hard to say he's like the best 10 players in college basketball, but if you catch him on the right night, he certainly feels like that, right? He's just a complete superstar. And I love the draw that they have. Cal or Virginia Tech in the first round is fine. In the second round that they would get to play, it's like you're looking at a Louisville team that's very banged up. Like, Rain Smith is out right now. We'll see if we can get him back and get healthy. Plus, they just played each other. Like, you know how hard it is to beat a team twice. How about beating them twice in like a 5-day span? Like, that would not be easy at all. So I don't think Stanford is a pick that's like they're going to win this league. I don't think they're going to pull an NC State, but I would not be surprised at all if they could make a little bit of a magical run to the semifinals. And then you go from there because, I like Kyle Smith. I think they have a good proof of concept right now as a complete superstar. And I think if they can get some help from the three-point variance flipping their way, they have the worst three-point variance luck in the last month. Teams are shooting 36% from three. They're only at 31%. If that flip-flops a little bit and they get a little bit more luck on that regard, maybe we could see Stanford playing Clemson in the ACC tournament semifinals.
Yeah, Reynaud's one of the best players in the country, sleeper NBA prospect. Jalen Blake's, formerly of Duke, just an absolute warrior. And Kyle Smith, I said this when he got hired, it's so appropriate that he is the head coach at Stanford because I think he's the smartest coach in the country. I mean, what he does from an analytics perspective, if you ever go back to when he was the head coach at Columbia and he found buy games to like nuance the metrics and things like that, and all the things he's done from an analytics standpoint, every hustle stat I think they call it the hustle stats that he's really patented. You talk about his coaching tree. It includes both Todd Golden at Florida as well as Kobe Altman, the GM of the Cavs. So Kyle Smith, if there's somebody you want to bet on, I would go with that. All right, the third category that we are going to do for every conference tournament is an impact player. And I'm going to talk about Chucky Hepburn from Louisville, who was just named the Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC. And this is not a commentary on whether or not I agree with that. In fact, I actually want to talk about his offensive production. This is a guy last year at Wisconsin who averaged 9 points per game. And the narrative was that he was going to come into Louisville and be a great point of attack defender and really set the tone. But his offensive numbers have jumped up beyond anybody's expectations. He's got career highs in not only points, but also field goal percentage, free throw percentage, rebounding, and assists. The numbers have jumped from 9 to 16 points per game, from 4 to 6 assists per game, from 3 to 4 rebounds per game. And in the last 10 in particular, he's gone off for a couple huge games. This guy is proving that he can get hot almost on any given night. He had 37 in a win against Pitt and 29 in a win against Florida State. That is not the player that anyone was expecting coming out of the portal last year. So more offensive explosiveness than we thought, and the same hard-nosed, tough point of attack defender. Trotter, any last word on the Defensive Player of the Year award? Because I know you have some feelings there.
Yeah, I probably would have gone with Cooper Flagg over. I know I would have gone with Cooper Flagg over Chucky Hepburn, but that's not taking anything away from Chucky. He has been terrific, a terrific transfer portal evaluation. And just, I think this says a lot about breathing confidence into guys. Like, there were times last year where Hepburn looked a little bit, just hesitant and a little nervous, and just it didn't feel like he was comfortable at all times. He's gone to Louisville and really turned into a complete alpha and a killer. And he's a terrific defender. He is not the best defender in the league. That is Cooper Flagg.
All right, let's go to the Big East now, where St. John's is the number 1 seed, and this is being played at Madison Square Garden. They are 27-4. Rick Pitino is the Big East Coach of the Year, and St. John's really swept all these awards. R.J. Luis is the Player of the Year. Zuby Ejiofor is the most improved player, so obviously St. John's with all the hardware. Again, we've talked about the Johnnies plenty of times on this show in recent weeks. They've really defied the math, whereas Duke has their math is perfect. St. John's is proving you can win it in a kind of a throwback way. They're not a very good three-point shooting team. They don't take very many threes, but they beat you on the possession game because they get more than you do. They do it by forcing turnovers, getting on the glass, and they just play hard, and they've got grown men. There's a reason why Rick Pitino says he's not interested in recruiting high school players. These guys are grown men. Trotter, quick thoughts on the Johnnies here. How heavy of a favorite would you rate them? And by contrast, who is another pick you have in this league?
Yeah, I like St. John's for sure in this league. I think they're definitely the best team. I think they'd be my pick to go the farthest in the NCAA tournament because I think they're so switchable defensively. But if I'm looking at this league and just kind of handicapping it, I like the draw for Creighton a lot. Like, they have a potential to play Georgetown or DePaul in their first matchup. that's like the walking wounded. Georgetown does not have Thomas Sorber. DePaul has multiple guys out. Like that's a win in the first round if Creighton can take care of business. And they're at the bottom of the bracket as well. Like they don't have to face a red hot Xavier team. They don't have to face a Marquette team that can really heat you up. They don't have to face St. John's until the title game. No, they match up very well with UConn. Like they have a lot of opportunities if they see them in the semifinals, I think, to take care of business and put themselves in position to get a little piece of hardware. And, it also helps when you have two of the best players in the country. Stephen Ashworth has been terrific, one of the best off the dribble shooters in college basketball. And then Ryan Kalkbrenner, like he gets anointed the fourth time that he's won the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. Like it's just rarefied air. I don't think we'll ever see a player do something like that again. The king of verticality, but he's just been outstanding offensively this year. We talked about him before on this show. Just the amount of times that he has stayed true to who he is while adding on to his game is really, really special. So give me the Blue Jays. I think the Blue Jays are going to make a little bit of a run in MSG.
Yeah, I love Kalkbrenner. And just to reiterate what we said, and you can go back and watch this, we talked about players who opted to come back to college basketball rather than pursue the NBA. And Kalkbrenner, even at his age, given the resume, even after his fourth year, I think has only helped his NBA stock. He's the defensive player of the year, but he's shown some increased offense and specifically his ability to stretch the floor. Everybody knows he's a drop coverage monster. He can really block shots. He's as much of a deterrent as he is a shot blocker. So huge fan of Ryan Kalkbrenner. The what he has shown this year, how it has both impacted Creighton and also helped his NBA stock. I think that's an important talking point in the Big East this season. Trotter, it's interesting to me that you were kind of anticipating a Creighton-UConn semifinal there because your sleeper in the Big East suggests that you don't think Dan Hurley is getting out of the quarterfinals. Tell me why.
Yeah, so again, I have to clarify, if I could pick a real sleeper team, it would be Xavier, who's been the best team in the Big East since February 1st. But I have to pick something outside the top 5 seeds. That's why I picked Villanova. And Villanova, the one reason why is they have a little bit of that NC State type of recipe where it's like you have two outstanding individual offensive players that are really tough guards. And I think they're going to be able to take advantage of Seton Hall in the first round. And then you go into that second game against UConn. I have not seen UConn be able to guard Eric Dixon very well. And Eric Dixon and Wooga Poplar are just complete freight trains. And what's the big issue this year, like with UConn, is like they just do not stop guards from getting 2 feet in the paint and getting to the front of the rim. Wooga Poplar has been one of the best drivers this year, just those long closeouts. He attacks and can really mismatch hunt and get to the rim. So I like Villanova to maybe make a little bit of noise. But again, I'm prefacing this. I would have loved to go with Xavier, who I think is on a complete heater. And I really want to see that team in the NCAA tournament. Because if they make the NCAA tournament, I don't think they're just a bubble team. If they make the NCAA tournament, I think Xavier has a chance to make a legit run in March.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Xavier because my impact player to watch is Ryan Conwell from Xavier. He's at his 3rd school in 3 years, but he is playing his best basketball of his entire season in the last couple of weeks. He's got 4 straight 20-point games. And in that streak, he is shooting 19 of 30 from behind the 3-point line. When he is shooting the ball like that, stretching the floor like that, this Xavier offense operates at an unprecedented level. And his volume has been off the charts. I mean, we're talking about 6 or more 3-point attempts in 4 straight games, and he has made at least 50%. Well, he was 4 of 10 against Providence, but prior to that, he was 50% of better in the last 3. So he is playing at an absolute elite level, and it's giving this offense a totally new dimension. You got Zach Fremantle, the monster of efficiency inside. When those two were at their best, I'm totally with you. I think this Xavier team is a major threat, and that matchup with Marquette is going to be absolutely thrilling because let's face it, it's a game Xavier might have to win. All right, let's keep it moving now. We're going to go to the Big Ten, and it has been an interesting season there where Tom Izzo has got the number 1 seed on a 26-5 team, a team that really doesn't have a true star. Jace Richardson has emerged as the top NBA prospect of the bunch. He's getting a whole lot of buzz, but this is a team that is also doing it the old-fashioned way. They're doing it with balance. They're doing it with defense, and it has been really an impressive season for Tom Izzo. But Trotter, I'm going to go back to you. Your favorite team, assuming you're going to keep it interesting and not pick the Spartans, who do you like in the Big Ten?
I like what Maryland's doing a lot. I think there is a chance for them to have the highest potential in the Big Ten tournament and also in the NCAA tournament. You know, the Crab Five, we talk all about them, but like they don't have a lot of flaws in this starting five. Juju Reese is playing like an all Big Ten defensive team. It was a crime that he wasn't, an all defensive pick that came out. But Derek Queen, we've talked about it all year long. He's just been one of a dominant guard or dominant big man. It looks like an absolute pro. But I think the guards for Maryland are going to really have to carry them. You have to win multiple games in a row, and their first game could be against Illinois. That is not an easy game against an Illinois team that's starting to play a little bit better. But Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, and Selton Miguel have just been ballers this year. Gillespie out of Belmont, Rice out of Virginia Tech, Miguel out of South Florida. Like, what a terrific transfer portal evaluation by all three of those guys. They've come in and just been outstanding. So, yeah, maybe you look at Maryland and go, yeah, like, the lack of depth is a concern when you need to win games over and over again, but just the raw talent perspective and the mismatch hunting that they create and the guards that can make shots off the bounce and off the catch, like this is a tough cover and they're a good defense. Like this is a really, really dangerous team. I'm really bullish on Maryland making a really, really deep run. And I think it starts in Indianapolis.
So my only question about Maryland, and feel free to interject on this, but my question is the second unit, especially in a conference tournament type scenario where you play back-to-back games. When you look at their point differentiation, their point production, you've got 5 different players who are averaging 12 points or more. So that first 5 is incredibly hard to guard because they can beat you in so many different ways. After that, the next highest guy in the team averages just under 4 points per game. So who off the bench can give him a spark plug if you get a couple guys in foul trouble, if you get a rolled ankle, things that are going to happen when you have to play 3 or 4 games in a row. That is my only question about Maryland, but certainly it has been a dream season for Coach Willard. Derek Queen having a phenomenal season as well. Interestingly enough, now I want to ask you about a quote-unquote sleeper team, but I think you're going to pick a squad that was actually picked to win this league when we were talking in the preseason.
Yeah, it's weird calling Purdue a sleeper, but hey, they're outside the top 5. They somehow slipped to the 6 just because of how congested the top of this league was. But I love the draw for them. Purdue has a chance to potentially play a Michigan team in the quarterfinals that is just, they're just sinking fast. They really haven't played at a high level right now. And it's really fun to bet on a team as a sleeper that has the player of the year and a first team all Big Ten guy too, in Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith. And, I was trying to do the research on this, like the Braden Smith pick and roll. I need to find the exact points per possession on it against the various different coverages because it feels like he just cooks whatever you do. Like you want to play hard hedge, like he cooks it. You want to play deep drop, mid-range pull-up is there. Like you want to blitz him, he's going to find Trey Kaufman-Renn for a little like floater from 8 feet that's just automatic. Like Purdue is awesome in that two-man game between those two guys. And factoring in the draw, factoring in the talent that they have on this group, factoring in also this is a team that has championship aspirations and didn't get a piece of the title. I think they're going to head to Indianapolis extremely motivated, should have great crowds. I think Purdue can get it rolling a little bit. Like I would love if we're heading into that semifinals on Saturday, the Big Ten semifinals, and it's Purdue and Maryland to go to the Big Ten tournament championship game. That would be a big time game, and I'd be tuned in for sure.
I think you make an interesting point and an accurate point about the importance of the crowd in Indianapolis. Remember now, not speaking to you, but the viewers, Purdue has lost 5 out of 7. They were at the top of the standings before they lost 4 in a row. They rebounded with a couple of wins before dropping one at the very end. But still a top 10 overall offense in the country. So much of that comes down to Braden Smith. Defensively, they're 53rd. But they've really struggled to defend the paint, which is somewhat counterintuitive as they've transitioned to these bigger lineups. But nonetheless, they are certainly a team to watch. The player, or in this case, players that I'm interested in watching, well, we're going to have to turn on the TV tonight and hope they play again tomorrow because that is the freshman sensation, the freshman duo, I should say, of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Listen, the season hasn't gone as people hoped for Rutgers, but it has not hurt the stock of these two individual prospects. Both are still in the top 3 on my NBA draft big board. I think that is pretty much the consensus, although there's still plenty of time for that to be worked out. It's 2 dynamic individual talents who could very possibly be ending their college career this week. We'll wait and see. Again, I think it's been a lot of fun to watch them play together, even though they haven't reached what I think many people hoped their ceiling would be together. But we're going to see what happens this week in Indianapolis and if they can get it going. Because I'll tell you what, if these two guys can get clicking, it would at least be some extra cinema in the Big Ten tournament. All right, everybody.
My one thing, though.
Yeah. What do you got?
My one thing, though, is like if Rutgers has any hopes of trying to advance, can we play a lick of defense? Like they, at some point, like they have to guard, and for a while, it feels like Rutgers' defense is just completely disintegrated. They have absolutely no chance of advancing, no matter if Harper and Bailey are brilliant. If they don't find a way to get some stops.
All right. Well, that game, the USC plays Rutgers Wednesday, 7:30. You can check that out for the latest college basketball news leading up to Selection Sunday in the NCAA tournament. You're going to want to visit 247sports.com. We always have you covered. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, and guess what? The portal isn't open yet, but the transfer portal updates have already started, so you're going to want to check it all out there. 247sports.com is Travis Branham and the team are already hard at work covering that portal. All right, we're going to keep it moving here, and we are going to move to the Big 12. Kelvin Sampson in Houston, just another year, 27-4, one of the best defensive teams in the country, one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, and frankly, one of the hardest playing teams in the country. I think, we've talked about who's this year's Marcus Sasser. Do they have that star power? I'm not sure that they do, but I think collectively, this is a team that is every bit as good as some of the Houston teams we have seen in years past. And I think nationally, they may actually be a little bit underrated. When you talk to teams they've played, when you look at the numbers, it tells a pretty convincing story. These guys are as good as it gets in college basketball. Not only are they the favorite to win the Big 12 conference tournament, but they are a legitimate NCAA tournament threat, top 10 in the country in offense, and the second best defense overall in college basketball. Trotter, your pick to win the Big 12 tournament this week, given that I just went with Houston, is who?
Yeah, I'm mixing it up still. Let me look at Arizona, too. This is a group where if I'm looking at trying to win multiple games in different ways, I think Arizona's roster does that. Like they do a great job of tweaking their lineups and just kind of mismatch hunting depending on who they're playing on a night-to-night basis. It is not the Caleb Love show every single night. Jaden Bradley has taken on a bigger role. They've had really good opportunities where they get KJ Lewis times to cook in transition a little bit. Trey Townsend has emerged for them lately as a guy that they can find against different mismatches. I love the front court that they have. Henry Visar has been terrific as a stretch five. Toby Awaka adds that physicality. Carter Bryant as a freshman where, just the ball comes off his hand so clean as a shooter. So this group, extremely good defensively. I think that they've had some times where their defense hasn't looked as good as the numbers necessarily indicate just because of the matchups. Like some of those small ball teams have given them some issues as well. Some of the finesse teams, Arizona State gave them some issues because Arizona State basically played, 4 guards for that entire game due to their injuries. So I like Arizona. Like this is a group a little bit down the board. If you're looking at betting markets or a little bit farther down the board, I think they're the 4th or 5th highest odds in this league, but they have championship level upside. I think they could get hot here in Kansas City.
Getting hot is really the key, right? And so is confidence for them because this season has been kind of in an inverted bell curve. They started out really slow. Everybody was asking, what's wrong with Arizona? What's wrong with Arizona? Are they even going to be an NCAA tournament team? Then all of a sudden they take off, right? They have this great start to conference play. And yet lately they've lost 5 of their last 8. Now, a lot of them have been against some of the better teams in the country, teams like Houston, Iowa State, even Kansas on the road the other day. But then there have been also some losses like Kansas State in particular. I know BYU was a pretty a controversial one, shall we say, but losing 5 out of 8, they don't necessarily have the same mojo they did a month ago. So that is my question about that squad. Can they get the confidence back and fight through the adversity that it will inevitably take to win multiple games in a row and win a conference tournament? When we start to talk about sleepers, though, and you mentioned, I mentioned BYU, certainly a team that's very, very hot. But I want to talk a little bit about Baylor because this is a team that has been decimated by injuries all season long. You picked them as your sleeper. I am aligned with you on that front. What is it about this club that makes you optimistic?
Well, first off, it's just hard because I feel like in the Big 12, the difference between the haves and the have-nots is just really drastic. The top of the league compared to the bottom of the league is just wildly different. Baylor's kind of in that in-between ground. They were supposed to be in that tier 1, and they haven't necessarily got there. And even despite the injuries to big man Josh Ojianmuna, they really miss his rim protection. But despite all of that, Baylor's a really tough guard. Like they still are. And if you're going into a game being like, all right, we got to find a way to stop Rob Wright, and then we have to find a way to stop Langston Love and Jeremy Roach, and then VJ Edgecombe, who's probably a top 5 or 6 pick, and you still have Norchad O'Meara there. Like that's a tough team to play. And I don't think I like Baylor against some of these like extremely physical turnover forcing defenses like a Houston. I don't like that matchup, but they have a chance to play Texas Tech in that second round. That is a game where they're going to have to, that's a little bit more of a finesse game. I don't think Texas Tech's defense is quite as much of a turnover forcing unit that could give them trouble. I like how Baylor matches up against Texas Tech far more than I do against like an Arizona or against, a team like Houston. So give me Baylor to make a little bit of a run. And guess what? They also have desperation on their side too. They absolutely need it for their NCAA tournament hopes. Like, I think they need to win their first game, and they might need to win their second game to head into Selection Sunday feeling really good about their chances.
Fair enough, but I'm with you. I like Baylor to make some noise this week. All right, my player to watch in the Big 12 tournament is Richie Saunders. And if you haven't watched him yet, you're missing out because BYU is playing phenomenal basketball. They've won 5 in a row, including that game at Arizona that we mentioned. Richie Saunders averaging 16 points per game, about 4.5 rebounds, and about an assist and a half. But when you look at these highlights, you notice the spacing in Kevin Young's system, and this guy has thrived in the system. His shooting splits are 51% from the floor, 44% from behind the three-point line, and 80% from the free throw line. In the amount of space that they have, he's not only a shot maker and floor spacer, but he's someone who can put the ball on the floor and attack straight line drives. He can get the ball moving, and once they get it moving, they don't stop. BYU's offense has been a ton of fun to watch. Richie Saunders is my player to watch in this week and in this week's tournament. And if you haven't seen that Kevin Young interview, make sure you head on over to our YouTube channel that you're watching right now, One-on-One with Kevin Young a few weeks ago. He breaks down his vision for this BYU system and what drew him to them from the NBA. All right, let's go over to the SEC, where Trotter and I are aligned. The team to beat here. Even Trotter can't deny that Auburn is the number one team in the country and the favorite in this SEC. He didn't go with any number ones in any leagues except for Auburn. And credit where credit is due. Trotter was all over Auburn from the very beginning. I mean, if you go back to our preseason shows, he was calling this the team to beat in the SEC. I was picking Alabama. But Trotter, tell me why you have been such a big proponent of this Bruce Pearl team for so long and how you've been so vindicated.
Yeah, I do feel vindicated, even though I definitely got some things wrong with them. Like, I did not expect this type of season from Tahad Pettiford, but I do think the underrated part of that is the year 2 transfer breakouts have really come into form. Denver Jones is playing like the best version of himself as a shot maker and defensively. Chad Baker-Mazara, when he's not doing anything, on the court just to pick up technicals or get ejected, like, he is a terrific player, one of the best players in this league. And then you add in Janai Broom, and then you add in Chaney Johnson. Like, the player development and the recruiting has just meshed very, very perfectly. And then I like the draw too in this one too, especially off that loss to Alabama. I know it didn't necessarily have any real ramifications, but Auburn played like they were trying to win that game. And losing on your home floor to your rival is a tough look. I think they're going to head into this tournament with a little bit of vinegar in their mouth and ready to rock and roll and try to show. From a legacy perspective, if you can win the SEC regular season title and win the SEC tournament title and earn a number 1 seed, like, you're talking about Auburn as an all-time team in college basketball history. I think Auburn will be ready to go. And they just have so many answers to the test offensively. It's like, you got to guard Janai Broom, you got to guard Todd Pettiford, pick and rolls, you got to guard the three-point shooting of Baker-Mazara and Denver Jones. Chaney Johnson's like a 4-man that very few other teams have. Like, he's big, strong, and physical. Like, that's a tough team and a tough matchup. And I think they get it rolling.
All right, so here's some basic info on Auburn if you're one of those people who I can't relate to who just start to watch college basketball at this time of year. First of all, they have the best offense in the country. Janai Broom is leading them in 4 of 5 major statistical categories, including assists. So the big fella is getting it done, and that's the reason why he is the primary competition for Cooper Flagg's National Player of the Year honors. In addition to being the best offense in the country, they have 6 different players averaging in double figures. So this is not just a one-man show. It is anything but. They play hard, they play physical, but they are 4th overall in the country in turnover percentage, meaning they take great care of the basketball. All of their shooting numbers from every level are extremely efficient. And on top of that, this is a veteran-laden team, with the exception of Tahad Pettiford, who's provided a huge spark as a freshman. These guys are old. And they are experienced, and they act like it. They are physically farther along than a lot of the teams they're going to play in the NCAA tournament, and they play with a sense of experience that is hard to duplicate. Trotter, that having been said, in the SEC, who is your – I mean, I know this is hard to say for a tournament that I still have the over and under for 12.5 teams in the NCAA tournament, but, I mean, who would be your sleeper
Yeah, I joked with somebody that like the road to win the SEC tournament is harder than the road to win the NCAA tournament because it's like you have a 1 seed in Florida, a 1 seed in Auburn, or a 1 seed potential team, Alabama, or a 2 seed in Tennessee. It's like this is hard. This is hard. But if we're gonna go for sleepers, can I offer Mississippi State up a little bit? Now, this is a group that I've been high on at times throughout the year. I think that they've been extremely unlucky since February 1st. They're shooting like 29% from three. Their opponents are at 39%. Like that's a 10-point gap. That's very, very unsustainable. If they could have that start to flip in their favor a little bit, I think you're looking at a group that they take great shots. I think Chris Jans has done an underrated job of revamping their offensive process, and they're really talented. Like Josh Hubbard is a complete stud, and everybody kind of knows him. But I think Keyshawn Murphy is a sneaky NBA guy. You watch him play, like the behind the back passes as a big man, his feel and pick and roll is terrific. Like that's a group that can really go. They got big wings. If Riley Kugel, RJ Melendez, Claudel Harris, they get two of those guys going at one time, in addition to Murphy and in addition to Hubbard, like they're a really tough team. And they've played with basically everybody in the SEC. So again, it's hard to win this league and especially hard to win this tournament. But I could see Mississippi State getting on a little bit of a heater here.
All right, we've talked a lot about Auburn. People are talking about Alabama coming off of the win over Auburn last weekend. I want to talk a little bit about Florida, and in particular, I want to talk about Walter Clayton and that backcourt, because when it comes to players to watch, I've got my eyes on Walter Clayton. True senior, played 2 years for Rick Pitino at Iona. The expectation in the industry was that he was going to follow Pitino to St. John's. Instead, he opted to go back closer to home and play for Florida. He was terrific last year for Todd Golden as more of a shot-making off guard. This year, he's transitioned to a much more significant on-ball presence. He's continuing to shoot the ball with extreme volume, taking over almost eight threes per game, and still knocking him down at about a 37% clip, even though every defender he plays is being coached to run him off the line. The biggest jump in his game, though, has been the decision-making and facilitating. Last year, he was barely over a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. This year, he's much closer to 2-to-1. He's doing it with over 4 assists per game. So we're seeing him operate out of pick and roll. And he's a versatile on-off ball scoring threat. You combine that with what they've gotten from Elijah Martin, the FAU transfer, who's really gotten it done on the defensive end of the floor. And I think this is one of the best backcourts in college basketball. Of course, you add Will Richard to that as well. So that is the player to watch in the SEC. We hope you have enjoyed this version of the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show as we broke down every major power conference tournament. I will tell you that next week is going to be a busy week. We are going to be with you on Monday morning for a huge bracket breakdown. If you're not calling out of work, make sure you close the door and turn on YouTube. We will break down your entire bracket and help you figure that out. We will be back on CBS Sports Network next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So gear up. It is the happiest time of year. For Isaac Trotter, I'm Adam Finkelstein. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We will see you a lot next week.